I'm Aaron Mehta.
And I'm Justin Katz.
Justin, we are here to break down the last day and then do a little bit of show roundup of the Sea Aerospace Conference here in scenic National Harbor, Maryland. Let's start with today's keynote speech. The first time that Secretary John Phelan was speaking to industry, kind of his biggest stage since he took office, I believe you said 14 days ago is when he was sworn in. So he's still in the early days, but you were at the speech. What did you hear?
Yeah, so, I think the SecNav's big message to industry was that, there is going to be some change afoot. John Phelan is kind of an unknown entity to the Navy. He doesn't have the usual Navy background, and he's been acknowledging that in his remarks to Congress and his remarks to industry. The message today was that he wants to bring his acumen for business and, put it forth to the Navy and make changes, to the benefit of the Navy. Mm-hmm. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, right, but he certainly seems intent on the fact that, change needs to happen, and it needs to happen now because there's a lot of things going on in the world, and the world gets a vote when you're the U.S. Navy.
So obviously we've heard probably every secretary for decades now says, I'm going to make changes, I'm going to make things work better. Did you have any examples of what he's kind of going to be looking to do?
Yeah, he says he's going to bring a big focus to acquisition and procurement. How exactly he's going to do that, he wasn't very specific today, but just kind of an example that he gave was he has a good bit of experience in real estate and construction, so he knows kind of what things should cost when you're building a hotel, for example. He said his past firms have built hotels for $800,000. These are nice hotels, marble, fancy fountains, the whole nine. So he's wondering, how do I build a hotel for $800,000, but a Navy barracks, which with respect to the Navy, not quite as fancy, costs $2.5 million. So that's the kind of thing where, in his mind, the numbers just don't add up, and he wants to take a closer look at what's happening.
It's interesting. All right, let's talk more broadly about the show itself. Just walking around, my first big takeaway is that there was a noticeable lack of uniformed officials here. And that's from the junior officers to somewhat more senior people. Usually at these shows, people are just walking around. You're kind of seeing them gaggle, going to events, going to speeches. That just was largely absent. Yesterday I walked from the front door up to the media room, which is the back of the hotel, and I saw literally 3 people in uniform the whole stretch. It's very unusual for this kind of conference here. And so that really struck me. There was, to an extent, that was up to the senior levels. And what was your takeaway from the senior level attendance?
Yeah, so junior level attendance is always a little bit harder to judge just because it's kind of a personal decision whether they choose to come here or not. At the senior level, to Navy League's credit, they have done a very good job in the past of getting all the senior leaders out here. So we have the CNO, the VCNO, the commandants, the SecNav, the under SecNav. This year, not necessarily Navy League's fault, but a lot of these folks are quite simply not in their positions. The VCNO is currently the acting CNO. To his credit, he was here. Commandant General Eric Smith, he was here. He gave his speech. We had SecNav here for the Wednesday morning breakfast. It's not necessarily a prime time spot at Navy League to be talking on the morning of the last day. So that's a little bit off kilter. And then obviously, we don't have a permanent Coast Guard commandant. We don't have a permanent undersecretary of the Navy. Unfortunately for everybody, the transition has kind of put a damper on the usual star lineup that Sea Aerospace attracts.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Another thing, just talking with industry on the floor, kind of tying all this together was, I always ask, what are the conversations like? How are you guys, chatting? And everyone said, look, we're having conversations, we're making, progress on things, but it's been more business to business because there just haven't been that many uniform people. We haven't gotten the drive-bys that sometimes we would get with a lieutenant colonel who's working on a program. That just hasn't been here. And so they said, look, again, it was a positive experience. Nobody's saying this was a waste of time or money, but there is a sense of, if this kind of lack of attendance because of some guidance from the White House that's been imported, that we've seen now in a couple of shows going on, if this continues, there might have to be a readjustment of the money spent at these shows, the people they send, kind of what they're expecting to get out of them. So that's obviously a big business story that we're going to be keeping track of. We have a couple shows coming up. Modern Day Marine is in DC in a couple of weeks, I believe. Space Symposium's going on right now out in Colorado Springs as we speak. So this is a trend, obviously, we'll be keeping eyes on. All that said, there was still plenty of news from the conference, a number of interesting announcements, speeches we covered. You can track all of those at breakingdefense.com. They're up now. We'll have some more stories coming after this video goes up. And of course, for all your naval news, you want to keep following Justin on Breaking Defense as well. I'm Mehta. Thanks for watching.